Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. Last summer, I set out on a solo road trip, driving across the country from Chicago to Los Angeles. I had already been on the road for several days, following most of the route along Interstate 40 to save time. One night in New Mexico, around midnight, exhaustion started to overwhelm me. The highway stretched endlessly into the dark, broken only by the occasional headlights of passing trucks. My GPS showed the next large town was still hours away. So when I spotted a small exit with a sign that read, "Motel next right," I decided to pull off. That road led me to a rundown place called Desert Inn Motel. It was one of those old establishments with a flickering neon sign and about 20 rooms lined up in a single row. The parking lot was cracked with weeds sprouting through, and only a couple of cars were parked outside. I figured it would at least be cheap, and I planned to leave early in the morning anyway. I parked my Honda Civic and stepped into the front office. As the doorbell chimed, an older man, maybe in his 60s, emerged from the back. His hair was greasy and he wore a faded flannel shirt. He introduced himself as Mr. Heron, the owner. He wasn't particularly friendly. He just asked for my ID and payment up front. $45 a night. Cash only, the card machine's broken, he explained. I handed him the money, signed the register, and he gave me the key to room 12. "Quiet night," he muttered as I left. My room was at the far end of the row, right next to number 11, which was dark. When I opened the door and flipped on the light, I was hit with the stench of stale smoke and damp carpet. The bedspread was thin and stained, the TV was a tiny relic from the 90s, and the bathroom tiles were yellowed. I dropped my backpack on a chair and texted my sister. "Made it, crappy motel, but I'm fine." I was too tired to care. After a quick shower, I slipped into pajamas and sat on the bed scrolling through my phone. That's when I noticed it. A small hole in the wall above the nightstand, about the size of a coin. It was on the wall that separated my room from number 11. The wallpaper was torn around it, as if someone had jabbed through with a screwdriver. At first, I assumed it was just damage from years of neglect. Old motels like this are full of flaws. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I leaned closer, expecting only darkness, or maybe the faint outline of the next room. What I saw froze me, an eye staring straight back at me. Bloodshot, unblinking, pressed right up against the hole. My heart lurched and I stumbled backward, knocking the lamp off the nightstand. It crashed to the floor, but I didn't care. I grabbed the phone and dialed the number for the front desk printed on the key card. Mr. Heron answered on the third ring. My voice shook as I told him, "Someone's in the next room." I just saw an eye watching me through the wall. "You need to check it." He paused, sighed like I was bothering him, and said, "Room 11 is empty. No one checked in there tonight." "I know what I saw," I insisted. "It was an eye." He finally replied, "All right, I'll come take a look," before hanging up. I paced the room, trying to stay as far from that wall as possible. Minutes later, there was a knock. I peered through the peephole. It was the owner with a flashlight. I let him in, pointed at the hole, and explained what happened. He grunted, shone his light at it, and said he'd go check the other room. I stayed inside, door locked, listening. I heard him open room 11, walk around, then return. "Empty," he said flatly. "No one in there. Probably just your imagination after a long drive." I cracked the door open and asked, "Can I check for myself?" With a shrug, he handed me the key to 11. "Go ahead, just lock it when you're done." I waited until he left for the office, then grabbed my phone flashlight and stepped inside. It looked identical to mine, the same worn furniture, the bed unmade like it hadn't been touched in days. No bags, no belongings. I searched the closet, under the bed, even the bathroom. Nothing. The hole was there too, but on this side it had been crudely covered with tape. though you could still see through. I started to feel silly, like maybe it really had been fatigue playing tricks. I went back, barricaded my door with a chair, and covered the hole with some tape I had in my bag. The next morning around 7, I woke uneasy but ready to move on. As I packed, I pulled the tape off for one last look. That's when I noticed faint carvings scratched into the paint around the hole, made with something sharp, maybe a key or nail. They formed phrases barely visible but there. He's watching you. Leave before he imitates. There were dates too. July 2022 and don't answer. Sarah 2019. Some were faded with age. Clearly, I wasn't the first to see something. With trembling hands, I snapped photos on my phone. Who was he? The owner. I tried convincing myself it was just vandalism, teenagers messing around. Still, it unsettled me so much I packed quickly and left. At the front desk, Heron sipped coffee. "Sleep well?" he asked with a blank expression. "Yeah, perfect," I lied, handing him the key. I didn't mention the carvings. I just got in my car and drove off. Back on the highway, the thought gnawed at me. Who peers through a hole like that? And what about the warnings? At a gas station in Albuquerque, I grabbed coffee and searched online. Desert Inn Motel, New Mexico, creepy. Nothing concrete, just reviews calling it cheap but run down, a few mentioning weird vibes. One TripAdvisor review from 2021 said, "Felt like I was being watched. Avoid if traveling alone." That hit me hard. That night in Arizona, I chose a chain hotel, a Holiday Inn for safety. From there, I wrote out my story on Reddit, posting it in r/True Scary Stories without naming the motel. The comments poured in. Some said it was just a peephole for creeps. Others joked about ghosts. But then a private message came from a woman named Emily in Texas. I stayed there in 2020, room 12. I saw the eye too. The owner denied it. I found scratched words saying he hears everything. I left at 3 a.m. She told me that after she complained, she heard knocking on her door that same night. 3 quick raps, a pause, then one slow knock. Exactly the same rhythm she'd used on the reception desk earlier. She was so terrified she barricaded the door and stayed on the phone with a friend until morning. "It was like someone was copying me," she wrote. That word, imitate, matched one of the warnings I'd seen on my wall. I kept digging online and found more accounts scattered across forums like Lonely Planet, even an old Yelp review. The owner is strange. Heard my own voice whispering from the wall. Thought I was losing it. Dates stretched back to 2015, 2018. Always women traveling alone. Men never mentioned it. I eventually found the owner's full name, Harlan Jenkins. A 2012 local article mentioned the motel being investigated for harassment complaints. Charges were never filed, the case closed. But a former employee said, "Harlan lives in the back office. He's always watching the rooms." My mind connected the dots. Did he drill holes to spy? Replay sounds to scare people? For what purpose? To make them paranoid? To amuse himself? I thought back to room 11 being empty. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was a hidden entrance. In old buildings like that, secret maintenance spaces weren't uncommon. I couldn't let it go. 2 days later, after reaching Los Angeles, I started my trip back east. Against better judgment, I stopped there again, wanting proof. I parked near a truck stop and walked over around 10 p.m. The place looked the same, with a few more cars. Behind the row of rooms, I found a narrow service corridor with pipes and vents. Next to room 11 was a small door half hidden by bushes. A service access, locked with a rusty padlock. I didn't force it, but I noted it. I went back to the office pretending to want another room. Heron recognized me instantly. "Back again?" he asked, squinting. "Just passing through." "Room 12 free?" He nodded, took my cash, and handed me the key. Inside, I taped over the hole again but left a tiny slit open. With my nail, I scratched a message into the wall, watching back 2024. Then I turned off the lights, set my phone to record audio, and waited. Around 1 a.m. it started, scratching noises on the wall like nails dragging across paint. Then a whisper repeating my exact words from check-in. Just passing through. My blood turned cold. He must have recorded me. I stayed still, listening. Then came knocks on the door. 2 quick, 1 slow. The same pattern I'd used earlier at the desk. Heart pounding, I flung the door open. No one. The parking lot was empty. As I ran to my car, I glanced at room 11. The light was on and the curtain was shifting. I drove straight to the nearest police station in Gallup and filed a report. I described everything. The eye, the carvings, the mimicry. The officer took notes, said they'd investigate, but warned. Old motels like that get plenty of complaints. Hard to prove. The next day they called back. They'd checked the property. Room 11 was empty. No hidden doors without a warrant, but they confirmed the scratches in 12, including mine. Heron claimed it was vandalism. No evidence of spying or recording. Case closed unless more reports surfaced. Back in Chicago, I kept researching. I found a 2017 blog post by a woman named Lisa describing the same thing. An eye through the wall of an empty room, then the sound of her own coughs and footsteps mimicked. Even heard my name whispered through the vents. Thought I was going insane, she wrote. She also mentioned that the owner had lost his wife years earlier in a car crash on the same highway, after which he became reclusive. Public records confirmed it. Harlan Jenkins, born 1958, bought the motel in 1995. His wife died in 2005. No kids. A 2010 Albuquerque Journal article described isolated motel owners struggling with loneliness. Some grow eccentric, it noted. Through a Facebook group about strange motel experiences, I connected with 5 more women. Their stories, spanning 2014 to 2023, matched mine. The eye, the scratched warnings, the mimicry. One said that when she confronted Harlan, he just smiled and told her, "Funny things make noise here." Another found a tiny wire poking out of the hole, like from a hidden mic. It all pointed back to him. Drilled peepholes, fake warnings, recordings played to torment, knocks mimicking patterns. Why? Maybe to relive trauma, or simply for sadistic amusement. Years of preying on women traveling alone on deserted highways, because who would question it? I reported everything to the FBI tip line, attaching photos and testimonies. I never got a reply, but last month I saw a headline. Desert Inn Motel shut down for health violations. Harlan was moved to a nursing home in Santa Fe. Is he still watching somewhere? I don't know. But now, whenever I travel, I avoid isolated roadside motels. I stick to chain hotels, well lit, with cameras. And if I ever see a hole in a wall again, I won't look through. I'll just leave. Story 2. My name is Alex, and this happened to me and my friends in the summer of 2023. We were on a road trip from Chicago to Los Angeles. 4 of us trying to squeeze in some fun before starting our post-college jobs. It was me, my best friend Mike, his girlfriend Sarah, and our buddy Tom. We were driving Mike's old Honda Civic, stopping at cheap places to save money. Funds were tight, so we picked motels off the highway that looked decent from the outside, even if they were usually run down inside. One night we pulled into a Motel 6 in a small town called Barstow, California. It sits right off Interstate 15 in the Mojave Desert. The place looks sketchy even in daylight. Faded paint on the walls, an empty cracked swimming pool, and a neon sign that flickered like it was on its last legs. But it was late, close to 11 p.m., and we were wiped after driving all day. The front desk clerk was an older man named Jerry, I remember from his name tag, who barely glanced up from his phone while we checked in. We got 2 adjoining rooms, 112 and 113. Mike and Sarah took 112, and Tom and I shared 113. There was a connecting door between them that we left unlocked so we could hang out back and forth. We unpacked fast. Both rooms smelled like stale smoke and cheap cleaner. The beds had thin sheets, and the AC rattled like it had rocks inside. We ordered Domino's and ate on the beds while watching TV. Some random rerun of Friends on cable. Nothing special, just decompressing and talking about the Grand Canyon we'd visited earlier that day. Around midnight, things started. I was lying down scrolling on my phone when I heard voices coming through the wall next to room 114. At first, it sounded like muffled talking, like people whispering. Then it got louder. A furious male voice shouting something like, "You think you can just leave after everything?" Then a frightened female voice, "Please stop. You're hurting me." There were thuds, like furniture being shoved or someone being pushed. And then crying, not screaming, more like sobs of pain. Tom sat up in his bed. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Sounds like a fight next door." We called out through the connecting door and Mike and Sarah came over. Sarah was tense. "Is that a woman crying?" "We should do something," Mike shook his head. "It's probably a couple arguing. Places like this, it happens all the time. Best not to get involved." But the noises kept going. More shouting, a smack that sounded like a slap, then more crying. It went on for about 20 minutes. Sarah paced. "What if he's hitting her?" "We can't ignore it." Tom nodded. "Yeah, man. Remember that story about the guy who ignored it and it ended badly?" My heart was pounding. We'd all seen those true crime shows about domestic violence. Sarah finally pushed us to act. "At least call the front desk." Mike picked up the room phone and dialed 0. Jerry answered, annoyed. Mike explained the sounds coming from 114. Jerry said, "I'll check it," and hung up. We waited. Suddenly, the argument cut off like someone flipped a switch. No more voices, no more banging. 10 minutes later, we heard footsteps outside, then an engine starting and pulling away. We peeked through the curtains. A black Ford pickup exiting the lot, too dark to catch the plates. "That was fast," Tom said. "Maybe they left." Sarah still wasn't okay with it. "What if something happened?" "We should knock," Mike rolled his eyes. "Babe, it's late. Let's sleep." She wouldn't let it go, so we all stepped out. The motel was quiet, only the highway buzz in the distance. The door to 114 was closed, no light under it. I knocked softly. Nothing. I knocked harder. Silence. "See? They're gone," Mike said. We went back to our rooms, but Sarah couldn't drop it. On her keychain, she carried a cheap Amazon UV flashlight, the kind for pet stains or fake bills. She'd bought it to check cleanliness on this trip. "Let's see if the front desk will let us look," she said. Tom snorted. "You're paranoid." But by then, curiosity had us all. Mike called the desk again. Jerry grumbled but showed up with a master key. He was a big sweaty guy with a mustache. "You sure about this? That room's supposed to be empty." "Empty?" I asked. "We heard a fight." He shrugged. "They checked out earlier. No one has it now. It made no sense." He unlocked the door and we stepped in. Room 114 was identical to ours. 2 beds, a TV, a bathroom. But it was spotless, like housekeeping had just finished. No bags, no trash, nothing. Beds perfectly made. "See? Vacant," Jerry said, already turning to leave. Sarah clicked on the UV light. "Hold up, let's see if there are stains. These motels are usually gross." Jerry huffed. "Do what you want." He lingered by the door. We turned off the main light and Sarah swept the room with the ultraviolet beam. At first, nothing. Then near the bed, irregular blotches on the carpet, glowing bluish violet like splatter. On the wall, hand-shaped marks, not smeared. On the bedspread, which looked clean, more specks popped out. "What is that?" Tom muttered. Sarah moved into the bathroom. A faint glow ringed the sink drain. The floor shimmered too. Jerry shifted, uneasy. "Probably spills. People are messy," I remembered what I'd seen on those shows. Black lights can reveal bodily fluids, even blood after cleaning. I whispered to him, "That looks like blood." His expression tightened. He got stiff. "No, you watch TV and get spooked. Time to go." He herded us out and locked the door. Back in our rooms, none of us could sleep. Sarah started Googling UV light blood detection. She confirmed UV can highlight traces of blood proteins even after cleanup. That room was empty, but we heard people, Mike said. "What the hell?" Tom ventured. "Maybe squatters, or ghosts." We laughed nervously. We weren't the supernatural type. This felt real. We packed up early the next morning. Jerry wasn't at the desk. A woman had taken his place. We checked out and hit the road, but Sarah kept digging. While I drove, she searched reviews for that Motel 6 in Barstow. Most were bad, dirty, noisy bedbugs. But she found a TripAdvisor post from a year earlier. "Heard a fight next door, called front desk. Room was empty. Weird stains, avoid another on Yelp read. Noises at night sounded like arguments. Staff acted strange, felt unsafe." We stopped at a Shell station and Sarah kept pulling the thread. She found a Reddit post in r/creepy encounters titled, "Weird experience at a Motel 6 in Barstow." The user described almost the same thing. Heard crying, intervened. The room was empty. UV showed stains. One comment suggested it could be staged. Another linked to a Victorville Daily Press article from 2021. Man arrested in Barstow for multiple homicides. Suspected hitman used motels as hideouts. We pulled over to read it. The man's name was Victor Ramirez, 45, from Los Angeles. He worked as a hitman for certain cartels. According to police, his method was twisted. He'd rent motel rooms and stage fake fights using recordings or accomplices to see if neighbors reported it. If they did, he marked them as snitches and later eliminated them to prevent witnesses to his real jobs. The article said he favored transient motels like Motel 6 because people come and go without questions. He cleaned up the actual crime scenes but left traces elsewhere to test people. Investigators found victims' blood in rooms he'd used tied to cold cases. Sarah went pale. "That's exactly what happened to us." Tom checked dates. He'd been arrested in 2021. But maybe he got out, or there are copycats. I searched Victor Ramirez on my phone and found a 2022 follow-up. He escaped during a prison transfer. Still at large, last seen in desert areas. My stomach dropped. We notified the desk. We intervened. We're marked. Mike tried to calm us. It was a coincidence. Keep going. But as we merged back onto Y-15, I noticed a black pickup behind us, the same one from the night before. It tailed us for miles. I sped up. It matched our pace. I took an exit to a rest area. It followed. "Guys," I said, "it's the truck." Panic set in. Sarah dialed 911. The dispatcher told us to drive straight to the nearest police station in Barstow. We doubled back, hearts in our throats. The pickup closed in, honking. I caught a look at the driver, a mustached man who looked a lot like Jerry. It couldn't be, but the resemblance was there. We pulled into the station, a small building off Main Street. The pickup veered away right before we turned in. We told everything to the officers. Officer Davis listened and took notes. "We've heard similar stories about that motel," he said. "Ramirez is still out there. He has connections. It's possible motel staff are on his payroll." They went to check the property. Jerry had vanished. He'd quit that very morning. Room 114 had been newly cleaned, but their forensic tech, with a pro UV setup, confirmed old blood traces. They matched a 2022 missing person case. That night we stayed somewhere else, a Holiday Inn in Victorville. We locked the door and watched the parking lot. The truck never showed, but I didn't sleep. Every little sound made me jump. The next day we drove straight to Los Angeles without stopping. We made it, but we weren't the same. Sarah broke up with Mike a month later. Too much stress. Tom doesn't talk about it. As for me, I comb through reviews before booking any motel now. And I bought my own UV flashlight. Looking back, we got lucky. If we hadn't left early, or if that truck had caught up, I don't know what would have happened. Ramirez is still wanted. There's an FBI poster online. If you travel through Barstow, stay away from that Motel 6. Believe me, this taught me that sometimes ignoring something might be safer. But then what about the real victims? It's a moral mess. Anyway, that's my story. Story 3. It was late last summer, around August 2023, when my wife, Lena, our 8-year-old son, Tommy, and I were driving home from a Midwest road trip. We'd visited family in Chicago and chose a scenic route back to Denver, steering clear of the big interstates. By the time we reached rural Kansas, the sun was going down and we were wiped out. From the back seat, Tommy kept complaining he was hungry, and Lena kept saying we should find a place to spend the night. We spotted a small roadside motel off Highway 70 called the Sunset Inn. It looked like one of those family places from the 1950s, a flickering vacancy neon sign and an attached diner promising home-cooked meals. Not a big chain like Motel 6, just a simple 2-story building with maybe 20 rooms, flat fields all around, and a gravel parking lot. The front sign read, "Family owned since 1962, and a pickup truck sat near the office. It seemed better than pushing another hour in the dark, so we pulled in. The owner, an older man who introduced himself as Mr. David, checked us in right away. He looked to be in his late 60s. Gray hair, a friendly smile, but eyes that were a little too sharp, like he was sizing us up. His wife, Mrs. David, stood behind the counter sorting keys. They seemed pleasant enough, chatting about the weather and how quiet the area was. The room was $65 cash only, which felt odd, but we didn't dwell on it. They assigned us ground floor room 12 with 2 beds and a small bathroom. We unpacked quickly and Tommy asked for food, so we walked next door to the diner. The place was called David's Diner. Checkerboard floors, worn booths. Only a couple of patrons were inside, a trucker at the counter and an older couple sharing pie. Mrs. David doubled as the server and handed us menus. We ordered simple stuff: burgers for Lena and me, chicken nuggets for Tommy, fries for the table. She said it would be about 15 minutes. When the food arrived, something felt off right away. The plates were cold, like they'd been sitting. My burger was lukewarm with a strange taste, not exactly spoiled, but metallic and overly salty. Lena noticed it too. Her fries were limp with a weird, almost chemical aftertaste. Tommy ate a few nuggets and said they were gross. We picked at our food to be polite and paid, about $25. Mrs. David smiled. "Sleep well." Back in the room, we settled in. Tommy put on cartoons on the old TV while Lena and I scrolled our phones. An hour later, Tommy said his stomach hurt, and then he vomited in the bathroom. It was bad. He was pale, sweaty, and crying. Lena held him while I wondered if it was car sickness or just the long day. But it got worse. Diarrhea, a hot forehead. We didn't have kids' meds with us, so I checked the bathroom cabinet in case some previous guest had left Pepto or something. That's when it got unsettling. The cabinet was crammed with old bottles, Tylenol that expired in 2018, generic antacids years past due, even a crusted half-used cough syrup. Who leaves that in a motel room? I showed Lena, and she said we should call the front desk. Mr. David answered, sounding concerned. "Poor kid. We've got medicine here in the office. Come by and I'll give you something I went over." The office was dimly lit, and he handed me a small bottle he said was stomach-settling syrup. No label, just "for upset tummy" scrawled on it. I hesitated, but Tommy was miserable, so I took it. Back in the room, we gave him a spoonful, and after a bit, he drifted off. Lena and I tried to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things didn't add up. The food, the expired meds, it all felt wrong. Around midnight, Tommy woke to vomit again. Worse this time. He was trembling, his skin cold and clammy. Lena panicked and said we needed to get to a hospital. Google Maps showed the nearest one in Salina, about 40 miles away. The car was low on gas, and outside it was pitch black. I decided to ask the office if they had a first aid kit or could call someone. The office door was locked, but I saw a light in back. I knocked. "After a minute, mister." David opened up, annoyed. "What now?" I explained about Tommy, and he sighed. "Kids get sick all the time. It happens. Come in. We've got a little clinic in back. My wife's a retired nurse." A clinic in a motel set off every alarm, but Tommy was suffering, so I followed him. We passed through a door behind the counter into what looked like a converted storage room serving as a makeshift medical space. A cot, some cabinets, basic supplies like bandages and syringes. Mrs. David stood there, gloved up. "Bring the boy. We'll check him." I ran back for Tommy, too weak to walk, and laid him on the cot. Mrs. David took his temperature, 102 degrees, and listened to his heart with a stethoscope. "Looks like food poisoning," she said matter-of-factly. "Sometimes the diner's food isn't fresh." Lena and I exchanged a look. Our meals had tasted off. They gave him an injection they called an anti-nausea shot, and he calmed a little. While they worked, I noticed the clinic cabinets were stuffed with more expired drugs. Antibiotics from 2015, out-of-date painkillers. I also saw surgical tools, scalpels, forceps, and what looked like organ transport coolers stacked in a corner. My pulse spiked. Why would a motel have this? Tommy dozed on the cot, and Mr. David pulled me aside. "Look, we've had problems before. The diner's old and sometimes the fridge fails, but we handle it discreetly. No need for doctors or police." It sounded shady. I left Lena with Tommy and pretended I was going back to the room for his blanket, but I really wanted to snoop. The office was empty, so I looked around. On the desk lay an old-style registration ledger. I flipped through it. Guest names, dates, notes. Some entries had tags like sick, handled, or transferred. What the hell? I also found newspaper clippings tucked in the back. Local Kansas stories about missing travelers. One from 2019 said a family vanished after stopping at a motel near Highway 70. Another from 2021 mentioned poisoning cases tied to small diners, but investigations had been shelved. With spotty reception, I searched Sunset Inn, Kansas incidents. Up came Reddit threads, people complaining about bad food, illness, and weird situations. One user said a friend stayed there in 2022, got sick, and woke up with stitches on his side like something had been removed. They thought it was a joke at first, but then the friend disappeared in connection with black market organs. It sounded insane, but my brain started connecting dots. Cold food possibly dosed to cause illness. The clinic with surgical gear, cover-ups. I ran back to the clinic. Lena was there, but the Davids were whispering in a side room. I peered through the crack. Mr. David was on the phone. "Yeah, I've got a kid here. Young organs. The parents too, if needed. Can you send the van?" Ice shot through me. Organs. This wasn't care. It was a nightmare. I grabbed Lena's arm. "We have to go now." She looked confused, and I whispered what I'd found. Tommy was groggy from whatever they injected, so I picked him up. As we slipped out, Mrs. David saw us. "Where are you going?" "He's not stable." We bolted for the car. Mr. David came after us, shouting, "Come back. It's not safe out there." My hand shook as I turned the key. The engine caught, and we fishtailed out of the gravel lot. In the rear view, I saw him standing there with the phone in his hand, no doubt calling whoever was on the other end. We sped toward Salina. Tommy was still sick, but we reached the Salina Regional Health Center ER around 2 a.m. The doctor said it was severe food poisoning with signs of some toxin in his system, possibly contaminated meat or deliberate adulteration. They ran tests and kept him overnight for observation. Lena and I told the police everything, the food, the meds, the clinic, and what I'd overheard. Officers investigated the Sunset Inn the next day. Turns out the Davids had a history. Back in the 90s, there were reports of poisonings at their diner, but they paid people off or intimidated them into silence. More recently, the motel was tied to a rural organ trafficking ring. They targeted passers-by, truckers, travelers, families, who wouldn't be missed right away. The clinic was a front for harvesting kidneys, livers, whatever they could sell. Police found evidence, organs preserved in those coolers, shipment records to shady buyers in Mexico and dark web markets. The Davids were arrested. Mr. David's real name was David Thorpe. He had prior assault charges. His wife, Evelyn Thorpe, really was a nurse but lost her license in 2005 for stealing meds. The ring included other locals, a doctor from a nearby town and a van driver. They tainted food with mild poisons like ipecac, or worse, to induce illness, then sedated victims and operated. Not everyone died. Some woke up missing a kidney, thinking it had been an appendectomy or something similar. Tommy recovered after a few days. We got lucky. We left before they could do more. I still have nightmares about that night. The cold burger, the expired bottles, the whisper about young organs. If you're driving through Kansas, avoid small no-name motels. Stick to chains like Holiday Inn and always check your food.